to British politics with action, not words. Well, today, his actions speak for themselves, with a budget that contains broken promise after broken promise. And reveals the simple truth that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have not been straight with the British people. Time.
So Sir Keir Starmer is meeting the Irish leader Michael Martin in a conversation which will focus on growth and national security.
Well, meanwhile, it's reported Chancellor Rachel Reeves is planning billions of pounds of cuts to benefits and other public spending.
Something is brewing inside Westminster, and Labour's top brass are nowhere to be found. Rachel Reeves, the shadow Chancellor, once seen as the steady hand for Britain's economy, is now at the heart of a crisis that could rock Keir Starmer's leadership to its core. The murmurs in the corridors of power are turning into open discussions, and they all lead to one unsettling truth. The Bank of England wants her out. Will Starmer stand by her again, risking everything? And just when it seemed the storm couldn't get any worse, it did.
Good afternoon, I'm Andrew Neil. This is The Times at 1. Chancellor Reeves will welcome the Bank of England's cut in its benchmark interest rate from 4.75% to 4.5%. But it's just about the only good news the bank had for her. It's made a big cut in its forecast for economic growth in 2025 from 1.5% only 3 months ago to a mere 0.75% now. That's bad news for a government which has made growth its primary mission. There's more bad news. The bank expects inflation, currently 2.5%, to spike at over 3.7% in the summer.
It's no longer just whispers. Top officials from Britain's most powerful financial institution are openly casting doubt on Reeves' ability to steer the economy, and now the fractures in Labour's leadership are becoming impossible to ignore.
The one job that I've always wanted to do is to be Chancellor of the Exchequer. I was an economist at the Bank of England for many years before I became an MP. I worked in financial services. I know how to run a successful economy. I just want the chance to be able to do that and turn this economy around so that it actually works for working people in our country again.
The Bank of England has long avoided political battles, but not this time. With the UK economy in turmoil, inflation stubbornly high, and businesses growing restless, pressure is mounting. Reeves was meant to bring stability, yet behind closed doors, senior bank officials are reportedly losing faith in her leadership.
And it doesn't expect to get back to its inflation target of 2% until the end of 2027. The bank thinks we've avoided a recession, but it's on a knife edge. It thinks the economy shrank by 0.1% in the last 3 months of 2024, but will rise by 0.1% in the first 3 months of 2025. Economic forecasts as fine as that are simply not bankable. We could indeed have slipped into a technical recession before spring has sprung. In essence, the bank is forecasting a stagnant economy, higher inflation, and rising unemployment.
Some insiders claim the Bank of England is already exploring ways to sideline her completely. An extraordinary step that would send a clear message Labour's economic strategy is unravelling. Yet Starmer remains unwavering, refusing to act. The real question is, why? What is he so afraid of? And could this crisis drag them both down? But wait, this is where the story takes a truly explosive twist.
In everything they're doing.
I just want to ask about what's coming up in what is supposed to be a statement but is looking more and more like an emergency budget at the end of this month. The Chancellor, we understand, it's going to slash welfare spending. It feels to a lot of our viewers like we are generating a lot of money for a conflict in Ukraine, and that's money that we took away when you came to government from pensioners with the abolition of winter fuel allowance, and now you're going to take away from another set of rather deserving and needy people, which is those on benefits. There was
For months, Labour has stuck to the same script. Britain's finances are maxed out, no room for tax cuts, no relief for struggling businesses, and no extra funding for vital services. That's been Reeves and Starmer's mantra from day one, but now the truth is out. A staggering £6 billion sterling has quietly been funneled into asylum seeker support programmes, a figure they never wanted the public to see. And the moment it was exposed, the backlash was immediate. People are outraged, demanding answers to the one question Reeves and Starmer can't afford to face. If there's no money, why is there always money for this?
Raised earlier on this programme that if you want to raise money for defence, you could put an extra penny, for instance, on income tax for perhaps the wealthiest. You could call it the patriotic penny. Are you sure you're getting money from the right people?
So we have been clear that we're increasing defence spending. That is absolutely the right thing to do, up to 2.5% of GDP by 2027 and then up to 3% in the next Parliament. We've made difficult decisions in terms of our aid budget to fund that. Now we are waiting for the OBR 4.
And the reason why will leave you stunned. While British families buckle under soaring costs and businesses struggle to survive under Labour's tax hikes, billions are being quietly funneled into a system that does nothing for its own citizens. And at the centre of it all, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor responsible for Britain's finances, standing firm, refusing to acknowledge the outrage, refusing to explain where the money is really going. But this isn't just a policy failure anymore, it's a crisis of trust. If Reeves and Starmer are willing to hide this, what else are they keeping from the public? And more importantly, how much longer before Labour's entire credibility comes crashing down?
This first budget last October, which has turned out to be a real drag on the economy. Though the bank is not blunt enough to say so, it's quite a damning critique of Rachel Reeves's economic policy to date. Let's dig into the bank statement and the figures with Times columnist Fraser Nelson, who joins me in the studio. I guess, Fraser, the first thing to say is no surprise at the rate cut since the economy's flatlining.
That's exactly right. I mean, what we're seeing now is that the expectations for the rates are changing. So now people expect it to bottom out at more or less closer to 4%. So that's about 0.5% more than people were expecting this time last year.
And if you thought that was bad, just wait. Because what's coming next could shake Labour to its core. Inside Westminster, the tension is suffocating. Rachel Reeves, once celebrated as Labour's economic mastermind, is now drowning in controversy. And this isn't just about bad policy. These revelations cut straight to the heart of Labour's credibility. First, there's her time at the Bank of England. Official records say she worked there from September 2000 to March 2006. But here's the problem. Her own LinkedIn profile once claimed she stayed until December 2006. A small mistake, maybe, but critics see it as part of a bigger pattern, a habit of bending the truth. Her team calls it an administrative error. But the damage is done, and then the story gets even murkier. During her stint at HBOS, allegations surfaced of a cavalier attitude toward expenses. Internal reports suggest Reeves, along with 2 other managers, was caught up in an investigation over misusing company funds, spending on personal gifts, including a £152 handbag and perfume for a superior. There was no formal punishment, but the whispers never faded. And for someone claiming to be Britain's most responsible financial steward, the optics couldn't be worse. The question now isn't just about Rachel Reeves, it's about Labour itself. If this is the person entrusted with Britain's economy, what does that say about the party backing her?
There's a slow narrative to this, that generally speaking, people are expecting less growth, higher rates, higher mortgages, higher borrowing rates, none of which is good for growth. So it's a long-term trajectory, is one which is getting gloomier. But the growth really struck me. I mean, the bank has gave us a report last November where they expected growth pretty much, the same as they expected before that. But now we see stagnation pretty much for the rest of this year. Now we're thinking that when it comes to 2026, you might be able to see some growth then. But for the moment, they are looking at what they'd never envisaged before, rather than a sort of post-pandemic steady increase.
But the personal controversies are just the beginning, because politically, Rachel Reeves is facing an all-out revolt. Keir Starmer has dug in his heels, refusing to budge on Labour's strict fiscal rules. But inside the party, tensions are boiling over. A £6 billion cut to welfare spending, including slashing disability benefits like the Personal Independence Payment, PIP, has sparked outrage among Labour MPs. For many, this isn't just bad policy, it's a betrayal of Labour's core values. The party that once championed working-class families and the vulnerable is now on the brink of alienating the very people who put them in power. And with Starmer backing Reeves at every turn, the real question is how much longer before the cracks become too big to ignore.
Before there's space for the plan. Sorry to interrupt you. You're thinking 5 years then to find space for the plan. I suppose the problem is winter payments... gone instantly. Everything else feels long term, and everybody was looking to you yesterday to think, what is it that's going to give us hope? You're making long-term plans to build infrastructure. Ordinary people can't even make plans on what their mortgage is going to be when they have to renew, or what their rent might go up to, or what the prices are going to be in the shops. Do you see what I mean?
Well, it's right to make the long-term decisions to put our country back on the right path.
And the turmoil inside Labour doesn't stop with Reeves. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds is now under fire after admitting he misrepresented his credentials, claiming to be a solicitor when in reality he was just a trainee during a 2014 parliamentary debate. On its own, this might seem like a slip-up, but in the context of Labour's deepening credibility crisis, it suggests something far more troubling. A culture where embellishments and misrepresentations aren't just occasional mistakes, but a pattern among the party's top figures. With Labour already battling scandals and internal rebellion, one question looms large. How much more can the public take before trust in Starmer's leadership completely unravels?
Right, time now to talk to the woman of the moment, Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who of course has backed the third runway at Heathrow Airport in an effort to, as she puts it, turbocharge the economy and create 100,000 new jobs.
But Ryanair's chief executive has called the plan a dead cat, and it could be a quarter of a century before we see it come into force. And Sadiq Khan, Labour London MP, says he'll use legal action to stop it from going ahead. Well, Rachel Reeves joins us now. Good morning to you. We heard you yesterday, I think you used the word growth 50-odd times, that it's all about growth. But how soon will we Brits feel better off and see it? Is there any chance?
As the Bank of England struggles to contain soaring inflation and a stagnating economy, one thing is becoming painfully clear. They no longer trust the people in charge. Behind closed doors, frustration with Rachel Reeves is reaching a boiling point. Insiders suggest that top officials at the bank are now considering an extraordinary move, acting without the Chancellor's approval. If this happens, it would mark a historic break, a public vote of no confidence in Labour's economic leadership, an undeniable proof that Britain's financial elite believe the government has lost control. And the damage isn't just on spreadsheets. It's hitting people where it hurts. Reeves' first budget was supposed to steady the economy, but instead it's fueled uncertainty. Inflation is still strangling working-class families. GDP growth forecasts have been slashed, and investment in British businesses is drying up at an alarming rate. The Bank of England has seen enough, and now the question is no longer if Reeves can turn things around, but whether she'll even be allowed to try.
Fraser, the first thing to say is no surprise at the rate cut, since the economy's flatlining.
That's exactly right. I mean, what we're seeing now is that the expectations for the rates are changing. So now people expect it to bottom out at more or less closer to 4%. So that's about 0.5% more than people were expecting this time last year. Now, that means, of course, that there's a slow narrative to this, that generally speaking, people are expecting less growth, higher rates, higher mortgages, higher borrowing rates, none of which is good for growth. So it's a long-term trajectory, is one which is getting gloomier. But the growth really struck me. I mean, the bank has given us, it gave us a report last November.
And the craziest part? This is all happening right now. But instead of taking decisive action, instead of replacing Reeves with a Chancellor the markets can actually trust, Keir Starmer is standing firm, shielding her, and risking his own reputation in the process. Which raises a massive question. Why? If Reeves were just an incompetent Chancellor, wouldn't it be easier to cut her loose and start fresh? Unless, of course, there's something much bigger at stake. And here's where things take a darker turn. Some Westminster insiders believe Starmer's loyalty to Reeves isn't just about politics. It's personal. The whispers are growing. If Reeves goes down, she might not go alone. Firing her wouldn't just expose economic mismanagement, it could blow the lid off something far more damaging for Labour's leadership. So now, the real question isn't just about Reeves' future, It's about how deep this crisis really goes.
That is what I am determined to deliver as Chancellor of the Exchequer.
We hear you, but of course, actually, that 11% that you talked about, inflation, was well down, and they handed over roughly where we are now. There's been no growth, I think 0.1% at one point, and then back down again since you've taken power. And it wasn't actually my question, was it? The question was, when will we Brits feel better off? You know, are we going to see the airport in 5, 10, 20 years? Are we going to see the other plans within that timescale?
In terms of the airport,
what's going to happen in 25 right now?
Could it be that keeping Rachel Reeves in power has nothing to do with protecting Britain's economy, but everything to do with protecting secrets Keir Starmer can't afford to let slip? And trust me, once you stay until the end, you'll see why this changes everything. Because when you put it all together, the personal controversies, the disastrous policies, the growing rebellion within Labour, it paints a bleak picture. Reeves isn't just facing political heat, she's at the centre of a storm that could take down Labour's entire leadership. The public is watching, doubting, questioning whether the people in charge have any credibility left. In this high-stakes game of political survival, one wrong move could set off a chain reaction with consequences far beyond Reeves herself. And here's the biggest twist of all. This isn't just about Rachel Reeves anymore. This is about Keir Starmer, about Labour's entire economic credibility, and about whether this government can survive what's coming next. Because if the Bank of England follows through, if they start acting without Labour's approval, it would send a message louder than any speech or press conference. Britain's financial institutions no longer believe Labour is fit to lead, and if that happens, Reeves won't be the only one fighting for her job. Starmer could be next.
Well, it's right to make the long-term decisions to put our country back on the right path. But I am also confident, because of the planning changes and the regulatory changes that we're making as a government, that these big projects don't have to sit in the pipelines and get clogged up in the courts for years. We can actually crack on and deliver them. We've committed to build 1.5 million homes in this Parliament. Those are homes for
we're talking
young
about
people
4 or 5
to
years.
get on the housing ladder.
You have to give us something.
No, we're not.
As
No,
the
no, no.
Chancellor,
Kate,
that
we're talking
people
about
can feel will
1.5
get better this year. We're only in January. Can you promise anything by December?
So now, the real question isn't just whether Rachel Reeves can survive this crisis, but how long before Keir Starmer is caught in the blast. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on the stories that matter.